Hi everyone, a very good evening. Happy Saturday to everyone who's actually watching us via the YouTube channel. First and foremost, welcome. I hope you guys are actually enjoying your Saturday. Just kind of like chilling at home. Reading a book, or either you guys are actually picking up a new hobby. It's best to actually stay at home right now. So first and foremost, welcome to the SNRspeaks YouTube channel, where this channel will eventually have people from my circle of peers to actually share about their industry, share about their interests and their personal or even career lifestyle. And also, this SNR Speaks YouTube channel will eventually advocate people, from unconditional conversations, from a coffee chats to fire grilling, And without further ado, I would like to actually introduce you guys to actually our first episode. So before I actually introduce and bring in my speaker for today, I'm actually very pumped up because we recently talked about this topic about personal finance. So having to know him for the past several years ago, I'm happy to actually have him to debut and be remarkable enough to actually be on the first episode of this SNR Speaks YouTube channel. So without further ado, let me welcome him, Mr. Yuva.
Hey,
Hey,
Sophia, thanks for having me. It feels nice. Congrats on the first episode, the pilot episode.
thank you very much, and I'm actually very honored to actually have you on board because recently we were just talking about personal finance, right? And knowing you from the past several years ago, maybe a little bit introduction we can share with the audience. How we met. We met at Millennial program, right?
Yeah.
And this program was eventually advocate for final year students who wants to actually get prepared for their workforce environment altogether. So that's where I've met Yuva, and it's just very pleasant to actually see how the both of us actually grow. And maybe you can share a little bit how what do you do to our audience today. So passing the mic to you, Yuva.
Right. So, to put into perspective, what do I do is that, well, I go around advise people making their finances better. Like, in lack of better words, I'm living a lot of uncles and aunties dream where you advise young people and young people listen to you without arguing much. They just listen and put what they are listened to into practice. So it's a dream job for a lot of aunties and uncles, basically advising people. But in particular, on a serious note, advise people on their finances, licensed by Securities Commission, and of course, then to do podcasting about it as well.
Awesome, awesome. We will be talking and discussing a little bit more about your Spotify podcast. That you mentioned because the topic today, the brown guy that drives from engineering to finance. So I'm sure audience today wants to know what do you do? I mean, like of course you are actually a
Mhm.
licensed financial planner, right? But in terms of your background education itself,
Yeah.
me myself knowing that you're from engineering, actually you're not from finance. So
Mhm.
probably, if I could actually ask your first question, how how and why finance? After 4 years hustling in engineering, yeah, why do you want to land on finance? Yeah,
Right.
besides holding the auntie uncle.
Right.
Possible.
So it all started when around my first year. I thought, graduating from matrix, doing my SPM, I thought my maths were fantastic. I got an A for my maths. My physics was fantastic. And I thought, you know what? Since I'm good with this, I don't want to do anything with biology. So I don't want to do anything with biology. I don't want to do law. So it's like, okay, nah, let's narrow down options. And engineering seemed fun. It's mathematics. I'm good with mathematics, right? 2 years into it, I realized that I am absolutely bad at it. I was miserable. I wasn't happy at all. Put a lot of perspective into question. The moment it really hit me hard was I had one of the lecturers I tend to hang out a lot. He pulled me aside and he had this conversation with me. It's like, hey, Yuva, you might want to look other careers as an option because you don't seem happy doing this. Because you notice my points, the way I'm scoring, non-engineering topics, right? Steady je marka, pergi buat non-engineering like English class, geography subject, nothing to do with engineering or Excel. Participate event pun non-engineering events. So he was like, he started to notice this and he started to plant this seed in my mind, which I'm not sure whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, lah. But it kind of grew where I started to, since we are not going to do engineering, that was the time I was set. I can't see myself as an engineer. I can't see myself, dealing with machines, being very technical for the rest of my life. So time to start exploring lah. And I explored in one of the most random places ever. Like there was this one time I went to UM's Faculty of Business and Faculty of Language to attend their F&B course on Japanese fast food. So I attended the entire thing,
Oh,
only to realize
interesting.
the final exam is in Japanese. So I was like, nah. For a 1 week
Ah,
course I attend to answer the exam in Japanese, I'm like, it's not worth it lah. But the knowledge is there, all right? The F&B knowledge. And then went even explore, and that
mhm.
is when I came across the idea of being a consultant, because that time SME Bank was nice enough to offer junior business consultants. Like being a business consultant on a very internship basis while you study, you can do this after school,
Okay.
after classes, and all
Right.
they need is for you to record like what 12 to 15 hours a month, which wasn't quite toll taking lah, considering all the classes and whatnot, right? So bila buat benda tu,
Mhm.
I realized that hey, advice orang ni best lah. It's like you get to see things grow, you get to see the growth curve happens in something. So that's when I realized,
Yeah.
okay, you know what? I like the career of being a consultant. I want to consult people on their finance, not consult people on their finance. I want to consult company on finance, and I want to see companies grow. So okay lah,
Right.
narrow down that I know what I don't want, and I kind of narrow it down to something. Now during that
Mhm.
time, I was coming across and I came across Leaning Malaysia as well, like Leaning Youth lah. I came across that program, and then time
Okay.
program jumpa lah few mentors and whatnot, right? And that is where the interaction between my current boss, my
Mhm.
boss that I report to, he was part of the mentors as well. But we was like hi bye. He know I existed, I know he's existed. We
Mhm.
had a quick chat, and that's it. All right, it didn't take off anywhere from there. But towards the
Uh-huh.
end of the event, if you could recall, right, Ian was saying that, hey, if you guys want, feel free to reach out to me for consultation advice on your finances. I don't mind helping you out. So this will come back later in the part of the story. So after
Mhm.
that, I was back to job hunting again. I had the opportunity to look at one of the big fours to become an auditor. I remember
Yeah.
when I got the offer and I spoke with some of the ladies that I look up to in LinkedIn, and they were like, you are too happy to be an editor. You don't become an editor, you'll be miserable. It's like, I know the shift is going to be there, but I didn't expect such a up forward answer. Like, you will be miserable, it is not your world because you're too much of a people person. It's like, okay, fine. All right, I take it the answer as it is. Lah. And then
Mhm.
back to exploring, managed to get offer from two companies. Now, for me, right, I don't know whether it's a flex or a humble brag or whatnot, but being
Mhm.
an Indian guy, and we know how the stereotype looms, right? You are Indian, it's hard to get a job offer, right? You tend to hear this more often, but I never had such difficulty. I had no problems getting offers on the table. I don't know whether
Mhm.
because of the network of people I had the opportunity to come across with, or the way I can talk myself into things. Yeah, partially the later part lah, I would say, kind of be able to talk into things, right? So
Yeah.
that kind of got me offers at few places. However, it came down to two places. One was a very reputable banking company. The other was one
Mhm.
of the more infamous MNCs around lah. So the first company I wasn't a big favor of because they were quite strong on the corporate culture.
All right.
We had this case study where they were justifying about corruption being justified.
Mhm.
So the panel was saying that corruption is actually good for a business because it's actually a catalyst. It's a
Oh.
cost of business from a business point of view because once you overcome it, your business
Mhm.
get to propel further and make more profit.
Mhm.
So the guys I had on board, eventually after
Yeah.
some time of arguing, agreed to it. But being myself, I was like, no, that is wrong. You cannot
Yeah.
justify corruption. It is morally against. Yes, if you were to look
Yeah.
from a business point of view, it is making business profitable. But
Mhm.
in a bigger picture of things, this is bad. You're kind of monopolizing things. So we
Mhm.
kind of went back and forth at it, and that kind of left a very bad taste in my mouth when it comes to the corporate culture,
All
right?
right.
I started to realize, you know what? Maybe I am not meant for corporate culture because of the
Mhm.
attitude being very, how to put this, very rough around the edges. Because at the very core, I'm still an engineering student. And as we all know, right, we engineering firms are not the most polished set of guys when it comes to the corporate culture, right? They still rough around the edges and need brushing up. So, okay, that particular bank is no longer on the table. And then I came
Mhm.
across the other MNC. The MNC company, well, I liked the culture they had. The pay was splendid. It was quite high for a fresh graduate. The pay was
Yeah.
splendid. Everything ticked off the box. However, they put me have a chance where I get to sit across with my potential mentor.
Okay.
And when I look at the potential mentor, right, I wasn't inspired by him.
All right.
Because while I'm well aware with my attitude, I'm quite hard-headed, very stubborn,
Yeah.
very hard to push around. Like it's
Millennials are
too
like
hard
that, I
managing. Like you have dealt with me, Sophia. Like sometimes I can be very difficult to deal with, right? So I was very aware of my tendencies, and I need to have somebody. If you're gonna lead me, you better make me reach a point where I can look up to you,
guess.
right? So the
Yeah.
guy I was matched with, he was having everything that ticks off the list. He was in a good position, earning well for a 27-year-old guy.
Yeah.
But the thing that turned me off was he was very content with the place he was at. He was very comfortable. He was very happy. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, like you shouldn't get too comfortable. You should be always looking forward to something. You should be able to keep on constantly growing, and if possible, try to touch the peak at least once.
Yeah.
So he was giving me off that vibes, and I find like, you know what? If this guy happened to slack in any one of this, I know my natural instinct's gonna be like to overpower him, and it's not gonna end well for both parties.
Mm.
So, however, I was like, if I don't have any other options, I'm gonna take this because the pay is fantastic. Like, come on, fresh graduate. If you're offered 6K per month, like who doesn't want it, right? Like,
Woohoo!
straight out of
Yeah,
uni,
of
right?
course.
So
Yep.
it was quite tempting as well, lah. So that's how I came across my. Remember the mentor I came across in Lean 2018?
Yes.
And he offered about the idea of giving out complimentary financial planning, right? So
Yeah.
I reached out to him and was like, hey, Ian, I'm having my career search. I'm going to get myself a career. And remember you offered me to advise me on finances, right? Why not
Yeah.
we have a meet together? You can help me out on it. Because I was like, okay, I know knowledge about finance, but not to an
Yeah.
extent. Maybe that could have been something I left out. So I had a
Mm.
sit down with him. I remember exactly. We met at Mid Valley. We met at Garden Starbucks, the level 2 outside table out there. We had a sit down. We were going through things, and he was aware that I was looking for a job as well.
Yeah.
So what he did, brought out, he brought out a white paper. He gave me a pen and asked me to list down 25 things in life that I want.
25. I barely know
25.
one.
Huh? 25 things in life from now till till you're
Oh,
done lah. Right.
okay.
So when he asked me to list those things down, right, the moment is that that particular method is called Warren Buffett's 25 list. If you guys want to look it up, do look it up. Warren Buffett asks you to list down 25 things, and that from 25 things, narrow it down to 5 things that you really want, and only focus on the 5 things in life. Now, before we get to the 5 things, he saw my 25 and he was like, you know what, Yuva? I think you are short selling yourself. I think you can actually do better.
Okay.
And that was the aha moment for me. I'm like, oh snap. For the first time, I showed what I want in life without holding back, and somebody actually said, you can actually do better instead of trying to toning it down. So I was like,
Instead of settling for less or
yeah,
moderate. All
yeah.
right.
So people tend to encourage you to settle for less, don't dream too big, keep your
Oh,
expectations low, right? So it happened to me as well, because when I went to one of the interviews in one of the big fours, they were like, hey, what is your dream at the end of the day? How do you see yourself in your late 40s? And I was like, you know what? I want to be a video game streamer. Because I grew up watching KSI, all these fellas, right? I want to be a video game streamer. And they were like, oh, cute. That's like, they were like some fresh out of undergrad guy acting cute about, having big dreams in life. But to hear him on the opposite end say like, hey, you're selling short, you can actually do better things in life. I was like, all right, we are onto something now. And then we talked, and I don't know what he saw in me in that moment. He was like, you know what, Yuva, why not join my firm? You don't need to report to anyone else, just report to me. And you only have to accountable to me, and I'll groom you
yeah.
as much as I can, because I feel like our goals align. So that is the moment I was like, okay, let's take a step back. He was in a place that I want to be. 28, partner of a firm, living a good life, being in a place that I want to work towards to become. So that is when I was like sold into it. He is like, okay, I'm signing up for this. However, Ian, at the very core, I'm still an engineering guy, and the world of finance is very technical. The knowledge is not very specific. On top of it, you are responsible for people's finance. Like, duh, it's people finance, man, right? He said, technical knowledge is something that can be taught. It's just the people skills is the one that needs to be good. Because we have this saying in office, you can be the best financial planner on earth, but if people don't like to spend time with you, you're not going to make it. But you can be the absolute worst financial planner on earth, but if people like spending time with you and believe in your cause, then sure, why not? Yeah, you might stand a chance. So that ticked off one box for me. However, the second box, right, was a very personal reason for me, because I noticed that I like to go the extra mile if I have a very strong reason why. A strong why to believe in why I'm doing this. So I expressed to him bluntly, like, hey, I like youth empowering and stuff. For me, I treat job as a job. But if you give me something to be passionate about, I know I will go the extra mile to strive better. So this is where he was like, you know what, Yuva? Go back home. Take out Bank Negara's 2018 annual report. Just go to the report and look for this part where they talk about undergraduate pay. So when you talk about the undergraduate pay process, he was like noticing that over the last decade, the average pay, regardless whether you're an undergraduate, master's, or diploma, it is went down over 10%. However, your cost of living is at all-time high.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about this? So this is where I saw an opportunity. I was like, you know what? We can actually take this industry and talk with people about making their finances better. Because if you notice around us, right, more and more
Yeah.
graduated people are coming to industry. We are getting severely underpaid. Let's not sugarcoat it, all right? We are getting underpaid, but no one's talking about it and no one's helping us to manage it. Unless you were to really make it really bad, then Bank Negara steps in through AKPK and helps you to resolve the issue, all right? But other than that, no universities are cared about it. No place are cared about your financial well-being. So this seems like a space for me. Like, you know what? I like the idea. I'm sold on the idea. Hence why the transition from an engineering graduate to a financial services guy to become a licensed financial planner guy happened. So that's how the entire transition happens. It's like quite a long story, if you ask me.
It's amazing. It's amazing because, to be honest, when I actually wanted to actually talk this topic with you over at this YouTube channel, right, is because to actually leverage on the unconditional conversation altogether, where we might know that the issue is actually lingering around, but people don't talk about it, and especially like as a mass topic about how graduates are actually underpaid, regardless of any industry you guys are in. Probably if you're in MNC, you could be slightly better, but in general, it's just very bothering, the topic itself. And when you share, Ian, if you're watching this, cheer up to you, bro. Like you have you have definitely contributed to this, and because you are actually, well, I could say a figura or a figure to the millennials out there, and having to actually pivot from engineering itself to financial is just taking a leap of faith because, um, of course, because you are also exposed to someone who believes in you, right? At the end of the day, we need a little bit of like a push and also the aha moment. And it's great that you actually shared like how you pivot from engineering to finance itself, and look where you are right now. You are featured. You have your own Spotify podcast. You've recently, being being featured. Thank you. So yeah, this is amazing. And if I could ask, the next question, and who is your mentor, basically, Yuva?
Right.
Yeah.
So my mentor is my current boss, the guy that got me in lah. Because I like the philosophy that he tend to interpret, put into put into our heads, where he feels like a good manager or a good mentor should be able to allow the associate to replicate them and be better.
Yeah.
So this is to help them to project forward and propel forward in their career. So this is something that is quite personal to me. It's a philosophy that I really bought in when I joined him and decided to become one of his mentees. And when
It's
you get
such
the
a
chance to
beautiful.
give back
Yeah.
with your own
Yeah.
associates, it's like, it feels good.
It is beautiful journey because you are being mentored by someone who believes in you. That's number one. Second
Yeah.
thing is that understands that your capacity is actually not just at this 80%. You can actually fill up, 150% if you go a little bit of that push. Coming up, Funny Shara actually is watching us. She's mentioning something on the side itself, Funny, thank you very much for tuning in. Shout out to you, babe. We will get back to your question at the end of the session itself. But yeah, well, if Ian, it's amazing, and if I could also understand better, Yuvar, like for those juniors, you yourself, have to become the young adult right now, right? Having to pivot from engineering to finance. What could you actually say to your juniors who who actually wants to land on a different field altogether aside from their background studies. So a thing or two from you. Yeah.
Right. So for them, I would say, usually we don't know what we want, right? It's very hard to identify what we want, which is everybody gets that regardless whether it's a relationship or a career, regardless, right? We don't know what we want, but we know the things that we don't want. some of the things which you find non-negotiable, like for me, my non-negotiable was I'm not a big fan of the corporate scene, right? I'm not a big fan of um, to be too deep into auditing and whatnot. So I'm a huge fan of working around with people. So once you be able to identify this, right, you should be able to
Yeah.
eliminate this. Now, the important part is that how to identify things that you don't like is that you should explore. Knock around as much door as you can, because this is the advice that I go to give to my juniors as much to anyone, is that the 4 years of you being a uni student, right, no
Yeah.
matter how bad you screw things up, people gonna dismiss you as students.
Yeah.
It's like, student belajar lagi, masih belajar lagi. Kan tak apalah, no problem. We can excuse them. Like, even if you notice, even I was at UM and we know how UM can be slightly controversial when it comes to the political scene, right? You can see dudes carrying up banners and whatnot, right, during their uni days. And then they'll be like, okay
Very
lah,
controversial to
suspend
me.
2-3
Yeah.
minggu je. And then datang balik. It's like, So this is what you can do as a student. However,
Yeah.
when you are out and being a young adult, you can no
Yeah.
longer fall under the norm of being a student. You are now a young adult. So if you were to mess things up right now, the conversation would change. They'd be like, hey, you are an adult. You should have known better.
Oh.
Right? It hits home, right, Sophia? Like that particular feeling hits home. So
It
I would say
hard.
explore as much as you can. Usually, when I notice my fellow peers, some of my seniors that I notice that when they were in their uni, they tend to be too overwhelmed by within the four walls of the campus. I would say go out there and explore, go out there and network. Unless your goal is to become, along the likes of being in the uni lecturers and whatnot, then sure. All right. But if you are yet to identify what you are doing is something that you like, but there could be something else that you like more, you need to explore. If you don't knock doors and just have this assumption of what I'm studying is what I'm going to end up doing, then I'm afraid bad news are about to come. Because this is where I feel like people tend to hit later in their life, quarter life crisis. Like we joke about it, like I turned 25. And I'm happy to say I'm not in quarter life. I'm quite happy about what I'm doing, right? But more often than not, it's no longer midlife. It's more of a quarter life thing. So this is where like I'm studying for everything, and why am I not enjoying this?
Yeah. I
So,
actually, thinking out loud, right, Yuva?
mhm,
Um, well, I believe that when you're still in education level, I mean, like the studying mode itself, right? It's definitely about finding who you are, what you like, and what kind of a person you are in that, in the future down the road, right? Because I've seen great sum of people who is eventually studying A, they pursue B because it's just part of their passion itself. Like as simple as
mhm,
people who's actually pursuing law back in their studies day, but they are actually a news anchor, in their career pursuit. So that kind of achievement and pivoting, it's more towards like, oh, you know what, that was during my study days. I appreciate
mhm,
law, I appreciate certain industry, but this is where I'm going to go through because I
yeah,
find fulfilling. Because at the end of the day, you want to do something that is happy because life is just about understanding what you want for yourself and also how you can actually give the best, right? At the end of the day,
yeah,
right? So it's just definitely amazing, to actually find someone who's actually a young adult, finding passion and knock it and be able to
mhm,
actually not consult from someone who's actually internal,
yeah,
in our Malaysia itself, but you have consulted international
mhm,
clients, right?
yeah,
So I like this question, Fanny, from Fanny. I'm just
yeah.
going to pick it up. You don't mind, right?
Yeah, sure. I've been looking at the questions as well.
Yeah,
It's
I
like,
mean, I can't wait. I'm just so eager to actually ask you this. Right? Did you ever regret like
mm,
transitioning? Yeah, and did you like? Do you feel like you fall behind compared to your peers?
mhm. Maybe for the first few months, you start doubting yourself. That is definitely there. Like if you were to make the transition, right, you're
Mhm.
basically into walking into a new entire, like you're used to swimming in the swimming pool. Now they ask you from swimming pool, they ask you to swim in a river. So it's still swimming, but you're swimming in a different place. You're navigating to a different spot.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
things change. It was a significant that change in dynamic. It wasn't fun for the first few months because you get to get your rhythm, and you notice your other associates who are very comfortable in the other associate in the firm. Oh, they've been here for the industries. You will
yeah,
naturally you'll have that self doubt in yourself,
yeah,
like what if I could have just taken up the job by that telco company. Life would have been easier. All I have to do is the pay is much better for the starting pay. Here the
yeah.
starting pay is pretty bad and things like that. So there was that self-doubt. There was that moment where you go to bed every night, you feel like, snap, this doesn't feel right. Yeah, I kid you not, Sophia, my dad wasn't the biggest fan of when I decided to go for another field. He didn't take it very well. He was like, you could have just been an engineer. You studied for engineering. Why you are doing in finance?
Yeah.
And he
You
was like,
told
okay,
me.
I give you 6 months time, and then better sort your career out.
Mm.
And to make matters worse, after the 6 months where I joined the firm around October-ish, the
Yeah.
6 month mark was March.
Mm-hmm.
And right exactly at March 2020, we know what happened. It was MCO,
MCU. Yeah.
right? So the first 3 months of MCO was really bad because it became now even worse because, hey, you're not meeting clients, everything's messed up. You don't feel like you're working when you notice all your friends are posting IG stories about them working, and here you are trying to, just scrolling to it because you don't have any work to do. So
Yeah.
it really got into my head at certain places. Certain places, you know what? Let's take the easy way out. We know, like, if you were to be a UM student, there's a certain telco company always waiting for you to apply for them and join them, right? So the offer was always on the table. So it's about, if you ask me, right, it's about being resilient. Now, it sounds cliche, like, hey, you should be resilient and whatnot, right? But
Yeah.
when you have people that are believed and investing in, like, for me again, going back to my mentor, going back to my from senior partner, they kind of instill this mentality like, hey, you got this. You are not having a bad time. You are not being sad
Mm.
because you are incompetent. You're having a bad time because time happened to be like that. Plus, it's a
Yeah.
different feel from you. If you were to magically jump into this, become good, then anybody would have done it. It's
Mm.
not easy for everyone. It takes time for transition. It takes time for happen. So if you ask me,
Mm.
right, sometimes you gotta let time do its thing. It's a process at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, mm,
Great. Yeah. I
so
agree with that very much. Um, well, especially coming from the young blood or orang Melayu cakap, darah panas, we always want things to actually be very, very instant, very fast, right? But at the end of the day, we all have to come back to reality and pull one step
mhm.
back and understand that everything, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be.
Yeah,
This is something that I learned from Fanny and also
yeah, yeah, yeah.
close friend who's actually watching this as well, I guess, right? So these two people who's actually mentioning to me that if it's meant to
Mhm.
be, it's meant to be.
It's meant to be. Yeah.
So so a process is actually a process. It would take
Mhm.
1 year, 2 year, 3 years. But as long as you believe in that process and you believe in yourself of getting into that scenario and enjoy the journey along the way, and it's okay if it fails because at least you learn something, right? If you don't
Yeah.
fail, well, not to say failure is good, but
Mhm.
it helps us to be more appreciative towards life,
Mhm.
right? So, great, amazing, Yuva. And
Mhm.
do you want to pick up finance on the side? Like, would you recommend
Yeah,
juniors
sure.
taking up engineering field?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, the
Go
typical
ahead.
cliche joke, like the engineer would never advise another engineer to study for engineering. So I'm not gonna say that, right? It's very mean. It's a very bad stereotype for the industry. But here, what I have to say for fellow juniors or anybody who's considering taking the idea of doing engineering. Engineering, right, is one of those old fields that people tend to look at it from the outside. So, no, but the engineering chill je. The movie showing like that, but the engineers selalu chill, selalu lepak. Like, I'm pretty sure there are drama Melayu where the engineering guy makes off really well in life. And there's a fair share of Indian movies where the engineering guy is the cool guy in the campus. Like, pernah kan tengok cerita Three Idiots, right? You see how cool they made engineering look, right?
Yep,
Okay,
yep,
don't
yep.
believe any of those. All those are lies. Every single word to word are lies, right? Now, if you want to do engineering, make sure your heart is at the right place. Engineering is something that you don't do as a substitute. You don't half-ass engineering, which is the most important if you ask me. But it is one of those few STEM subjects that it's evolving in a very rapid scale. Engineering, like when I was entering my engineering course, I was doing telecommunications engineering. When I was entering
Okay.
my course, 4G was the big thing. But when the time I left, 5G was the big thing. And all this happened in 4 years' time.
Yeah.
And when I were to compare my FYP with my juniors from the next following year, they were dealing with artificial intelligence and
Yeah.
Internet of Things IoT with 4IR. So the change happens in a very rapid scale. So if your heart and mind is not at the right place, please don't do engineering.
Yeah.
It's quite abusive to your emotion. You will have a lot of self doubts.
Yeah.
Right, you know you are good, but suddenly kan, the topic is like, hey, time SPM pandai je, masuk uni jadi bodoh, right? So that typical
Blame
joke
you.
is true. I had that moment. I had that moment. It's like, oh snap, because the heart and mind is not in the right place.
Yes, betul. And
Mm.
most times I feel these days, right, juniors, they are more, I think it depends on like what kind of a family household are you from. So if you are
Mm-hmm.
from a very education, who believe like your parent believes in like, oh, the higher education you are, like
Mm-hmm.
you will have a better lifestyle in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think in my culture itself, like if you become a doctor or a lawyer, so this is where you're gonna like achieve in life and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. But without realizing, without having to nurture or even tell them that graduates of a doctor or even a lawyer will require you a process. So this is the process of 4 years of
Mm-hmm.
you not bathing. You could eat, but you would be eating a lot of snack food because you'll be like staying up late nights,
Yeah.
to revise all the jargons, the terms and whatnot.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So without having to make them understand that it's actually a process and it's a commitment for 4 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for instance, like after lawyer, I mean, becoming after having a law cert, right? You will need
Yeah.
to practice all these numberings and whatnot. So it's also a process. It requires a tough resilience, and I believe that's not meant for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't want to test and error, but also this is some sort of like, if I could share on my end as well, like for juniors as well, if you guys are actually watching this, manage your expectation by making a lot of like by asking around, like you said, like knock
Mm-hmm.
on doors, right?
Yep.
To better manage your expectation in terms of what is the field that best pursuit for you. You may not know it now, it's fine, but
Yep.
along the way, go forward for it because it's crucial, because at the end it's for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So talk. So are you open for any mentoring? If you can give any shout out to your juniors?
I'm like, sure, why not? Let's get started. Like, you are looking at a guy that went from engineering to the total polar opposite at finance.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm like,
amazing.
sure, like down for it, right? But
Cool.
adding to what you said, Sophia, I would say, like, sometimes parents look at like these are prestigious characters, doctors, lawyers, and engineers,
Yeah,
right? But another way of looking at this, it's about giving your kids an opportunity to network with
yeah,
people who are like-minded, right?
yeah.
It's an underrated word, which networking. So for
Yeah,
me, if you were to look at universities at future, right, like, how sometimes people say, oh, I'm going to be a uni dropout and pursue my dream and whatnot. Well, universities provide you that platform and opportunity. Like, you see
yeah,
the entrepreneurship clubs out there, it allows you to have access to some events that you can only go through if you're under a uni. So
yeah.
if you ask me, it's a networking opportunity and a platform for you to elevate yourself. Like, hey, regardless of which uni you're from, but if you were to attend an event, I'm a uni graduate, people will look you different, yeah, compared to if you say like, hey, I'm a dropout. Now,
Mm,
nothing against dropouts or whatnot, not trying to make any against statements against them, but it gives an opportunity for you to network. Whether or
yeah,
not you complete the study is a different case, lah. But
yeah,
it gives you that, it opens doors.
yeah.
So
Agree.
this is something that people tend to overlook whenever you get on uni and then they don't explore enough.
Do you believe it's just a stigma, like having to say like, oh, like when you being introduced by like, oh, you know what, I graduate from XX university, like, oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually a dropout from XX university. So if I were to be in that position, I would have this like, oh, he's a dropout. We all judgmental at the end of the day,
Yeah,
like regardless of how state of denial we are, right? We always feel like, macam, oh, he's a dropout, she's a dropout, right? But there must be a reason of a big why,
yeah,
right? And yeah, and maybe if we could have 100 of your mentor itself, that could be a pleasant world, because
yeah,
it's not easy for anybody to actually trust someone's capacity or even a talent. It
true.
requires another person who wants to champion others as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
So it's great that you actually start with junior and open to actually mentorship, which brings me to the next question. What motivates you every day as a young adult, especially when working from home, like, yeah, do you miss it a
Right.
little? I'm sure you miss the pancake section that we had, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah. So motivates me as a young adult. Well, it's like how sometimes people like to stereotype us, like people like to say, hey, you guys young adults, when you guys look for jobs, you always want to look for, can I add value? Can I add this?
Yeah,
And actually, it's true. Being able to add value to something and being able to make an impact, it's something makes you feel quite happy about. So in my line of work, when I look at people's finances and being able to say like, hey, you are doing this, but if you keep on doing this, it's going to be a red flag. It's going to be bad for your finances.
yeah,
Being able to arrest that and being able to bring it, put a shine on it, and them realizing like, oh snap, I thought all along I've been doing right. and only to
Yeah.
turn out like this.
Yeah.
And being able to sometimes, I have my clients that send me screenshots of their conversation with their buddies. I usually ask them to, hey, if you know somebody in your circle of friends that could, benefit from my services, refer them to me. So when they refer them to me and they have the conversation afterwards, right, like the recent one's like, oh shit, babe, I should have
Yeah.
met him earlier. He said so many things on perspective. So being able to hear that, being able to feel like, you know what, I impacted somebody's life. So that is
Yeah.
something that I really look forward to. It makes me quite serious. You know what, we really made somebody's life better today. Because I'm not sure how familiar are folks out there with this particular figure that I look up to in this particular statement. Remember Alex
Mhm.
Tan from Avidity,
Yeah.
the man went to
Yeah.
cancer
I
and
really
whatnot, right?
remember. Yeah.
I remember this one particular event that we went, and he was sharing about, or one particular event that we organized, and he was sharing about where he leaves for work every day, and then the child, his daughter, would ask him like, "Hey, Dad, where you are going?" He doesn't say he's going for work. He won't say he's going for his, nature of work in specific, but he will tell to his daughter like, "Hey, I'm going out to make an impact on somebody's life." I
Yes.
don't remember the exact word, but it walks along the lines of this. So down the road,
Mm.
right, if I were to have my own family and my kids were to ask this, like, hey, where you're going? I was like, you know what? I'm going out to make somebody's life better today. So to be
Such
able to
a,
be in a job that allows you to say those words like,
yeah.
you know what, this feels good. I don't mind it, but right now it's like, if
Yeah.
anybody asks why you lock yourself in the room and you speak alone at a computer screen, of course, I'm making somebody's life better over a computer screen. Times have changed. You're no longer living to the door anymore. So yeah, that's the kind of career that at the moment is going on. Keeping it's a fair bit of nice motivation when you hear the feedback text. Because whenever I conduct the entire session, I tend to ask like, hey, how do you feel? Because people
Yeah.
like to think about what do you think. Thinking is very logical, but feeling is very emotional. And then when they say like, hey, you opened the eyes. There's a lot I picked up today. I thought I'm doing right. So being able to be in a career that lets you do this, it's a pretty good feel. It's a damn
Yeah.
good feeling. That what kind of keeps the tank fulfilled and keep on driving forward.
Yeah. Amazing.
Mm,
Because you told me as well, like you had a back-to-back meeting, right? Especially when
yeah,
working from home, your time is at your own responsible.
yeah,
Where, of course, you might have your personal things to do, but you would rather that you schedule meetings with your clients because from one to another, it jumps to like because before you could jump to other consultation, that last question would lead to that, and it boosts your emotion because the last
yeah.
question that you had was how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you ask someone how she or he feels, after the consultation period as well, right? It's just so essential and it's so alive. It brings out a lot of like means in life that yes, financial is very very a sensitive topic, but to share that and you knowing you and understanding that, oh, you have impacted someone's life, and that's just brilliant. Actually, it's very
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. You were amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which also, well, this one is actually a very a question born there, right? We all can Google this, but I want to
Yeah,
hear it from your end as a
right,
licensed financial planner. Three
right,
hacks to save money in today's norm. Yep.
right, right. The first one is the easiest one you can do. Open your phone, go to Shopee, go to their settings part, and turn off the notification. That thing
Malaysia,
is a
cute
dumb
man,
thing.
guys.
It's like this is the easiest one you can do. The easiest one to do it for both Lazada and Shopee. Now, nothing against Lazada or Shopee. If you guys would happen this way, please don't come after me. It's just that your notifications can be very tempting. It's kind of like because like, hey, we are having offers. Do you want to check us out? It's like, well, it's okay. Let me check this out. And then you feel like, oh snap, flash sale with limited time. Okay, let me add this to cart. And then we're like, oh snap, there's 1 hour left. I better check this out. And then you proceed to check it out. So that's how you start incurring bills, right? So this is something like, please don't do that. Please do not do that. And then the second thing I would advise is that it's very fundamental as well. Save then spend. Such an underrated term. The
Mm,
idea of being able to allocate a chunk of money, regardless whether you're investing, you're just purely saving it, just go ahead and do that. It's not difficult. You're trying to put a budget and limit for your life to live. Now, remember, you are earning, yes, every single penny and cents is all under your name, but you want to be able to realize that, hey, we are not using the entire resource for the entire month. You want to make sure the resources are always there. So
yeah,
it is important for you to realize that, yes, it's money, yes, it's fantastic, but at the same time, you want to make sure both your finances are taken care of and you yourself are taken care of. You can go ahead and have fun, but don't have fun to an extent where you damage your future. All right.
Yeah.
And of course, lastly, well, when it comes to investments, right? I know there are a lot of interesting investment going on these days. Some we endorse, some we don't endorse, some based on going to a certain moon by a certain someone. Well, let's not get too deep into that, but rather invest in something that makes sense.
Mm.
It used to be in investing in something that you understand. Yes, it's important for you to understand, but if it makes sense, it's much better than you understanding it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's a very fine line between something makes sense and something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So these are like the three basic tips. Like if you were to practice it, you can practice it immediately. Turn off your notifications, save before you spend, and of course, lastly, invest in things that make sense. Like when make sure the numbers back it up, like not some funny numbers going around. If it's
Yeah.
too good to be true, chances are it's too good to be true.
I really like your number one. To know if
Yeah, that is like from the get go itself. Like make sure to turn it off.
well, it's a good self reminder for myself because
Mm,
well, online shopping has been a thing lah,
yeah,
right? Because it's just fun where you just like scroll leisurely, right? And then like, oh, but then ni macam nampak cantik. Like now, I started to think like, do I need this? Right? So it's like, no, I delay,
yeah,
right? But the last one, when you mentioned about like invest in something that is it makes sense lah. So maybe you want to like further explain that in terms
right.
of like investment stocks or like yeah, maybe you can give like a sort of a situation. Yeah.
Right. So when you're investing, right, it is important to realize that how it benefits you directly. You should be able
Mhm.
to clearly state that, like, if you were to deal with an intermediary or if you deal with someone, for starters, make sure they are legit, lah. Right? There are a
Mhm.
lot of people, especially right now, they're noticing you're withdrawing your ICNA money, with the iChitra and whatnot. You're getting a lot of allowance. A lot of self-made online gurus are giving you education on it. So make sure the person you're dealing with is legit. Right? That is number
Yeah.
one. So when you're dealing with someone and they're recommending an investment, right, make sure you have a look at it whether the numbers make sense or not. Is
Mhm.
it feasible? What drives this number? Like if you were to take like Apple, right? Apple is a huge company. So try to
Yeah.
see what drives Apple as a huge company. Is it the products that they sell? Or if the products they will sell, well, the new iMac came out quite in hype because people like the colors. Some people buy the purple color because they like BTS. So it drives it somewhere, right? So this is where we're gonna see like how this propels a company because the numbers make sense. Whatever they do, it makes sense. So you know you can have faith in such company.
Yeah.
But remember, yeah, just to give a tip out there, like not sure how many of you all know Warren Buffett, but if you guys were to look him up, he's one of the most successful investors out there in the Western horizon. He can be
Mhm.
said the Sifu of investments, lah. The
Yeah.
Sifu of investments himself on a yearly basis makes the profit
Yeah.
somewhere between 20 to 25%.
Mm.
Right? This is the Sifu. Now, if
Yeah.
somebody walks up to you and say they can outperform the Sifu, then shouldn't they be advising Warren Buffett or be much more successful than Buffett? Right? This is what we tend to like, it makes sense, right? When you put it that way, you should be advising Buffett because you're outperforming him. Then why
Yeah.
you are not the billionaire and why he's the billionaire,
Yeah. As simple as
right?
that. Yeah.
So identify all these marks, when you're investing. Again, it should make sense what drives it, what pushes it.
Mhm.
Not because people around decide to believe in it. Okay, you believe in religion, you don't need to believe in investing,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
To share with you also, with the audience as well who's watching us. I recently also like last year we actually had like a webinar for this financial topic as well. For business entrepreneur. So what happened was that so we had someone who is also talking about personal finance and also investment. So this speaker was mentioning saying that you need knowledge. I think that same goes to like what you're trying to also imply over
Mhm.
here is that you don't want to you don't want to start driving without having to know how the gear works, right? So having knowledge is very crucial to an extent where you might have that knowledge of like, oh, investment is good, but what makes an investment make sense? How does it derive, as in the
Yep.
processes behind it, right? That is also crucial to know, right? And he was mentioning saying that knowledge is very crucial before you actually jump yourself
Mhm.
to that invest. Yes, like everyone wants to make an investment, and also it's also like this society called FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I've not been investing yet. Like, you have done it, so like, oh, okay, lah, I follow you, but without knowing where to drive. Yeah, that's number one, the knowledge itself. And then second is that to also not put everything that you have on your resources
Yeah.
towards that investment because you will never know what's going to happen because you have the least knowledge. You're expecting someone to do it for you. Like, well, if the licensed friendship planning, it's a different story. But if you yourself are doing it on your own, don't put two hands or don't put two feet, right? It's
Yep.
more like spending at your capacity first, lah. Right?
Yep.
If I could correctly. Amazing, Yuva. Amazing, amazing. So, probably you have already asked this question. I mean, I already answered this question actually. Like your advice itself is
Mhm.
for your juniors who wants to actually pursue engineering, and they might be your juniors who actually watching this that
Yep.
is really hardcore of engineering itself. So
Mhm.
probably in general, maybe you can share what are the expectations in
Mhm.
engineering,
Right.
and how can they take forward from there. Yeah.
Right. So expectations for engineering. It's just been like what 2 years graduating. I feel like I lost a lot of memories about
Yeah,
it
we
when it comes to
we are
education.
still young. We are still young. Don't worry. Yeah, what is old?
Right. So advice would be in sense of, well, make sure you take your notes, make sure to attend classes, make sure you feel like you can do this for a very long time.
Mhm.
Because again, when it comes to STEM subjects, right, it's about a long journey. It doesn't just stop in your degree. Once you get into the industry, you're going to be learning about it as well. When you want to do your professional purpose in IR and whatnot, you're going to be learning this also. The interesting part, regardless of any career, is a lifelong journey, but engineering in particular, if you want to pursue it, make sure you pay respect to that field. If you don't feel like you're respecting, if you don't feel like you're in love with it, then I'm saying like you might want to think at other options. You need to be, how to put this, how the it requires a certain level of devotion to it, a dedication towards it.
Yeah.
Something that I didn't have, hence why I'm here. Like nothing personal against engineering, because I personally, when I was young, I loved my science subjects. You can
Mhm.
ask some of my teachers over there if they were to come across it. They know that the type of person I am, because best thing about the science field is that engineering as a whole, everything
Mhm.
starts with to identify a problem.
Yeah.
So that particular set of skills is something that I carry forward even to this work. Like when my client
Yeah.
says they have a issue with finance, I'm like, okay, to identify the problem, what is exactly your problem? And then from there we work it from there in order to solve that problem.
Yeah.
So to be able to have such thought process, I'm really thankful for engineering and the science field, because I doubt, I'm not sure how others, but I doubt I'll be able to pick it up elsewhere. So
Mm.
again, it requires a certain level of dedication. If you don't have the dedication, I would say engineering in it.
It's a long year of education period. It's a 4 years, right, for you?
This is a
Because
4 year
you
period.
were from diploma, you took diploma as well, right?
No, I didn't take diploma. I went for metrics. So I had a
Okay.
slight shortcut over there. Like, yeah.
All right, all right.
Mm,
Right. In the future, would you see yourself in pursuing? Well, we talk about it, but
yeah.
we talk about like
Mhm,
changing and whatnot, or like having the thought of it. So
mhm,
probably you want to also say something like, for now, yes, it's finance, but in
right.
future onwards, yeah.
The
Where do you
element
want?
engineering.
Would you still be would you still be in finance, or you want to venture a mixed mode of like engineering, or more probably like you take that fundamentals of engineering, having to have that problem solution mindset
Mhm,
and then apply that. Yeah. So how do you want to get it done, in the future?
right. For me, well, let's say for the foreseeable future, like, which foreseeable future means 10 years from now, I don't see changing any fields in particular. I don't see myself going back to engineering. Like I said, it requires devotion and constant attention towards it. So if you ask me, 2 years of not practicing anything from engineering, I would say I am rusty as all hell, and I don't want to burden my potential new employer or whatnot, right? To invest time on me teaching me, all right? Let's save the burden for that guy, lah. All right. So for that particular company, lah, any company regardless. So I don't see myself going back to engineering. But any other
Yeah.
fields, well, if I were to be financially secure, right? Like if I say feel like I've secured everything, I feel like I achieved everything that I have to achieve in this line of work, I wouldn't mind, overnight self create a YouTube channel or a Twitch stream to stream the games that I like to play. Because I'm a heavy gamer. Like I kid you not, this you are talking from our office table, right? Like I always have these two beloved joysticks of mine on standby. Like these two
What's
things.
that?
These are my joysticks for gaming.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
So these
yeah.
are my two joysticks that will be always on standby to play. Whenever I get to squeeze the moment, I will just quit the call, quit anything, and then just go ahead for gaming and whatnot. So surprising enough, it's right now just sitting over there collecting dust because the last game I played was the duration I played was only 30 minutes over the past month. But however, if I had the opportunity to secure myself financially, take care of all my bills and everything is done, I feel like all my responsibility is taken care of. You know what? I would quit overnight just to start a YouTube or a Twitch stream just to play games all day. That would be the only time I would switch careers and industry, more moving to the gaming industry, right? But other than that, nah, I'm gonna stay here for a long time. I feel like the industry is being, how to put this, it has a very bad image to it when you talk about financial services, right? It's not finance and finance, a huge difference between both of them. Finance involves on company, financial services is more dedicated towards a person. It takes a huge, how to put this, it tends to leave a very sour taste in people because people tend to look at this a very salesman industry. If you're good in sales, you can go in this and you succeed well, right?
Yes.
So for me, I believe that the wheel must be reinvented. It is no longer about, looking at the industry in a way that, hey, you masuk financial services industry kan nak jual insurance lah ni, nak jual unit trust lah ni. No, we don't want to have that anymore. We want to position this line of work where it becomes to an extent where you consult people to actually make their finances better. Where the product is no longer the instrument, but rather your advice. That's the kind of elevation that if I had the opportunity to reinvent this industry, that's what I want to do with this industry. It's like like I said, if I touch that particular part, the next generation of licensed financial planners can follow up with this, or any intermediaries that want to come on board and become licensed, if they can keep up with this such standard in the industry, then I feel like, you know what, you officially did it. Like, this is the perception they want to set. Because we don't see doctors as scammers, in our country. We really look up to doctors. However, when you look at this industry, it's like, salesman. So that is kind of a disdain because, hey, it's more than just that. Because we are actually foreseeing things that you rarely see. And we are doing this full time. So for an average person, this is part of their routine to just plan out their finance. Like, how many of us are familiar with, planning their own finances towards retirement? Rarely. But we do it on a regular basis. We see multiple finances on a regular basis. So this kind of allows us to do it. But at the same time, people disdain from us or stay away from us because they're afraid that they're being sold into something. So that is what we're trying to address over here.
It's great full share, when you mention about how this industry is shaped, and it is being put up at the mindset of like, oh, you are a salesman. I think it's also about the stigma in the local community where if you are talking the moment about financial, it's like, oh, you're not menjual lah ni, it's more on that instead of like taking the core of understanding that you are actually advising and nurturing, having to transmit that understanding of a financial to that person. And it all depends to like the audience juga lah, like some people they just have this probably the mindset that shapes at the end of the day, right, for everyone. We all have various exposure at the end of the day, right? Some people might came from like urban areas, so they might be a little bit open to actually talk about it. But people who's actually from different districts or regions, they will be more rigid. They will be more like macam stigma or skeptical about it. But I guess wearing, you as a licensed financial planner, you are actually wearing so many hats because you don't just analyze, because you did analyzing he or she feels about it, or he or she, why are they approaching you? So there's a sort of like skimming through of that portfolio is just amazing, because I've done that session with you, and I feel it's just very vital, for you to understand who are you talking to before you could approach anything, because you want to make that bridge. Percaya lah. You want to build that trust first before you can advise, right? You can throw from life. I can even Google. Anybody can even Google on all these platforms, right? But at the end of the day, we want someone to be more understanding of that industry. So perfect. So Yuva, we finish our pins, all right? So at SNRspeaks channel, we don't just talk about coffee chats. We also talk about how to grill questions to our featured speaker.
Right.
I'm sure you have excited about this because this question is not shared with you, but I have one real question that I'm going to ask you. What is financial freedom towards you. Is it the material angle, having a BMW or having to live in a
Right,
mansion
right.
justifies your financial freedom and your happiness, or
Mm-hmm.
having to just live pleasantly, being able to actually buy a BMW or twice.
Right,
What is financial freedom? I'm just giving you
right,
some
right.
sort of like, yeah, thoughts
Mm,
of it. So, yeah,
right.
what is
Usually, I
financial
will be
freedom?
the one asking people this question whenever I conduct a meeting. So it's
I
it's
just,
just like finally people want to listen what I want in life, right? Right. Uh,
but I would
right.
love to
So,
hear it. I would love to
mhm,
hear it from you. Yeah,
right.
go ahead.
So for me, is that it matters to me more. Money aside, for me, and what I want is time freedom. Like, if by the time I'm pretty sure some of the folks that knows me, you are somebody that down the road wants to have his own family, want to have his own something of its own, the family, the kids, and whatnot, right? I want to be in a place where I'm available for them, rather than
Mhm.
sending them to daycare,
Yeah.
sending them just picking up time jumpa hantar sekolah and balik sekolah je jumpa, and then sekejap jumpa time demand and then they go to sleep. I go to my life and things like no, I don't want to do that. I want to be there. I want to play a role in that process, and
Yeah.
I want to be able to set them up well in life. Like, hey, like to give a bit of context, my dad only had education at the SPM. I was the first male in the entire lineage of our family to go into tertiary education. So with the opportunity he had, he
Okay.
provided me this. So with the opportunity that I have, I want to provide even further. So that's the kind of freedom that I'm looking for, where you want to
Mm.
uplift your following generation, your kids and whatnot. Be happy with your partner. Be available for them. Work is something that you do out of passion, not because out of must. You don't need
Yeah.
your work in order to pay bills. That's if you ask me, that's a good state because your bills are already taken care of. They know how to pay themselves out. You don't necessarily have to go into that vicious cycle. So for me,
Yeah.
time is what I something emphasize a lot, to be able to have time in hand. Out of all the
Mm.
luxuries, time freedom is the one that's most expensive. Not everybody get to have it. And
Yeah.
for possible for me, I want to have as early as possible, at least by 40s, late 30s, or things like that, where money is no longer a concern. Time is something I always have available on, and I can be there for my families and my partner and kids and whatnot. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I'm looking for. Che.
Okay. Wow. Aku macam mana bila aku ni question, because why tau, like this financial freedom question is just it looks simple. What is
Yeah.
financial freedom? But everyone has their own various answers, right?
Mhm.
Like what kind of financial freedom you want. Well, the reason why I asked you is because I would like to hear from your perspective as a licensed financial planner. But I'm sure at the end of the day, you're also a normal human being that
Yeah.
you just want something that goes back to you and to the people in your loved ones, right?
Mhm.
So it's just truest for me. It's just very honest answer that I just listen
Yeah.
on this Saturday evening. Actually, having to have a family, like wow,
But I wouldn't say a no to a BMW. It would be nice to move around the family in a BMW. Just have to put the material part in, right?
wow, I think that's just like a freebies, I mean, like that's some sort of like gula gula we call it. I call
Yeah.
it gula gula. Like it's yelah, you dah earn that much, you dah ada financial freedom, so why not have it, right? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
well, plus at the end of the day, you buy it with your own sweat, so why not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But for me, like to think of it as like BMW would give you like a like some sort of like reputation of a
Yeah.
living. It's just well a different angle altogether lah. But
Mhm.
now I want to share with you something because just to share with also the audience that Yuva, the reason I'm sure I'm also curious. Like you have your Spotify podcast, and maybe you can share a little bit about it. Like what is the podcast is all about? While I share my screen,
Right. Sure. It's like this is where I get my screen. What my Spotify
I
pod thing.
share. Yes, there you go. You can see my screen now.
Right. Yeah. No, Sophia. I think you are yet to share.
Hold on. Yep.
Maybe.
You possible. Boleh nampak? Wait, hold
No,
on.
I tak boleh lagi, Sophia. Already got.
Hold on. Okay, no problem. I share with you. Oh, sorry, I didn't on it just now.
Mhm.
Okay. Yep.
Righty. So yeah,
Sure.
this is my podcast. The brown
So
guy
guys,
talk finance.
yeah, so this is actually Yuva's podcast on Spotify. So Yuva, what is it all about actually, and when did you start that? Maybe you can share. Yep.
Right. So the backstory of this is that this started last year May lah. So time to during the pandemic happened again. Since there's no social life, and naturally being when you're in a line of work where you talk a lot with people, you need to release that pent up tension, right? You need to want to be able to talk with people, get the juices flowing, and the mood going on lah. So
Mhm.
that's how this podcast came about lah. So initial intention was to create like a library for clients. Nak kata kadang-kadang
Oh,
client tak sempat jumpa ke, or you don't be able to attend them ke, right? I'll be like, hey, you know what? Just watch this episode, this parts. I think they should be able to answer your question. Kadang-kadang if they listen pun, well, they get to listen topics they are not usually familiar with, so they
mhm.
can get back with the questions and whatnot. So that was the intention.
All
Until
right.
it reached a certain point where people were demanding for topics like, hey, can you start talking about topics which are lesser spoken about, like, being identified, for young adults, macam mana nak start looking for insurances, start to look for retirements, or like
Yeah.
what exactly you need for emergency fund, like because the stereotype we listen is that it should be like what 3 to 6 times of your income. Tapi
Mhm.
if it were to be 3 to 6 times of your income for your emergency fund, but when you're
Mhm.
jobless, you're not going to be paying for your EPF, SOXO, or whatnot. You're going to be
Yeah.
jobless. So all you
Yep.
need is to survive your living expenses, and the rest you can put it elsewhere when you still have the job. But when
Mm.
you happen to lose your job, those things comes in as a backup. So
Mhm.
that's how it got the ball rolling lah, in a sense. And of course,
Mm.
some of my favorite topics to speak about in the particular my favorite episodes would be, especially when it comes to couples. Like, should you or should you not
Oh.
get a joint account? Like one of the episodes quite recent as well. Being adult, it's below that.
This
Investor,
one?
yes, should couples have a joint account or not? So this is one of my personal favorite episodes. But if you notice, we are moving towards a future where both partners are working, right?
Yeah.
It's no longer one partner have to support the other partner. It reached the point like, hey, if you do 50-50, macam mana nak bayar bill, right?
Mm.
Because sometimes couple goes for dates, ada seorang bayar makan, and other seorang bayar movie tickets, right? But we
Yeah.
all know the food price is much more expensive than the movie ticket. So how
Yeah.
do we balance out the field, right? To
Mhm.
be fair for both parties, right? Both of you guys are hardworking people. That's not so to make sure there's a gender balance to it. Well,
Yeah.
the suggestions was like, hey, have a joint account. Every month, contribute a couple $100. If you guys going date night, spend from the account. It solves all
Mm.
matters. Tak ada awkward moment you want to split the bill, and then there's like awkward creak silence when you guys about to pay the bill. So this address, and of course, if it were to go bad, how bad can it be? Like suddenly
Mm.
tak nak agree, tak nak part ways, or if you were to go really rough, if you were to have a divorce, how will it be? So
Yeah.
this is the things that was spoken in the episode. So that is one of my go-to reference episode. Another
Alright.
episode that I really like to pinpoint out would be the balancing between logic and emotion when it comes to investment. The ELF episode, yes,
Wow.
emotion, logic, and finance. It's about kita gonna realize that we humans are very emotional beings.
Yep. True.
We like the things the certain way sebab kita suka, right? Macam nak gunting rambut, for me, well, dulu Abang India can do it like $10-15, get the job done. Tapi sekarang tak nak pergi kat Abang India dah. Sekarang nak Abang Malay hipster. Abang Malay hipster is pricey, yes, but he makes me happy. They actually listens to what I say, right? So it's quite emotional. Logically, $15 is way cheaper than $60. Tapi
Yep.
$60 makes you happy, so there's nothing wrong. Nak kata, is it wrong to spend RM60 on your haircut? Well, I would say no. It's about doing things that keep you happy without damaging your future.
Mm.
So that's one of my episodes as well. And of course, the recent one would be the heart-to-heart conversation with the Gen Z lah. That is something that, yes, Gen Z, you are next. Yes, this is more dedicated towards millennials. But if you notice, we are a generation that when we are graduating, right, we are not graduating in an environment where everything is ideal. Some of us is working, but tak pernah sekali pun jumpa boss face to face. Onboarding happen online, jumpa HR online, negotiate contract online, everything is online.
Yeah.
So in a things where it's basis where everything is around your four walls of your room, how do you take care of your finances? What are the realities that you should realize when it comes to your finances when things are running in such a way? So that was the episode's punya intention lah, where you are saying like, hey, they are done. Our previous generation you guys are the future. We are in a generation where information is available everywhere. A lot of people advising you from a lot of angles, so you should be able to know whose advice to take and whose advice not to take.
Yeah.
Right? So like even another stranger can say like, hey, you save first but you spend. Right? That's a very common advice. But sometimes when it gets a bit too niche, right? you need to be aware what's the person's agenda,
Yeah.
which angle they're talking it from, which angle they're adjusting it, and
Mhm.
most of the time it's meant to exploit you lah. So this is where I would say like, hey, pay attention to who you're taking advice from, see the type of advice you're getting. So that's the Gen Z you are next. And I feel
Correct.
really guilty right now because the last episode I uploaded was May 13th and right now it's July. I just have to see that.
Well, it's
because I was having my CFP exam, guys. My CFP
yeah.
exam really took a toll.
Well,
So
it's
yeah.
fine. I mean, you have a great amount of topics here to actually pick up. So
Mhm.
it's amazing that you actually talk about the topic about couples,
Mhm.
especially in the community of the Malays. This issue is actually very sensitive. Even to actually talk about this joint account, right? Even to its before the marriage process, maybe some couples will have talked about it, but we're talking about in general
Yeah.
because this is also reflecting to the divorcee case. What is the primary reasons to that divorce is because of the financial arrangement altogether, where the wife wanted a divorce from the husband because the husband is not working and the husband is not you know probably having a good background to actually support the family, and this is the reason why a divorce case happen. So if I could also share with you, right, Yuva, like this joint account is very much sensitive issue, especially in certain demographics, like
Yeah.
coming from the very
We are talking
coming from
very Asian culture. Asian culture, we don't speak this out loud. Yes.
yeah. So when we talk about the Asian culture, it's true. Good term there.
Mm. Good save.
It's such a lifesaver, when it comes to the terms that I've been juggling. Yeah, he will find it right, guys. So,
Mhm.
so yeah, in the Asian culture, joint accounting is not something an issue. It's not a topic that any couple wants to talk about it because like,
Mhm.
oh, tak payah lah, duit you, duit I. But like they don't think of that long
Yeah.
term, right? Because tough conversation is not for everyone, I guess. But we have to get
Mhm.
consensus where tough conversation would eventually break up, and will eventually save the situation that we don't want it to happen in the future, like divorce, right? So
Mhm.
this tough conversation is just crucial. So any couples out there, so maybe I could listen lah to
Yeah.
your podcast later.
So
All
hopefully
right.
it doesn't cause a rift, right, between the couples once they start realizing each other's habits, and then
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh snap! You don't save anything. How are you gonna expect a married life with me, right?" So
Well, it's for me personally, right? I feel that's just essential because it's better that you argue it now rather than you argue it later. Because
yeah, yeah,
of course, you don't want it to argue it later, right? Be it before or after.
yeah.
But it's better that you talk about it now and argue about it now because well once you get into that consensus it will be a different situation
Yeah.
altogether because the way you're gonna solve it also requires different mechanisms and people and thought of process altogether because when you are
Mhm.
married you already have a child, you're not
Yeah.
going to get up and things like that, so it's just taken so many tools and factors all together, to actually pull that handbrake. So it's
Yeah.
amazing that you actually brief enough that she talk about that topic, and it takes a lot of like breathing, bro. Like it's not easy. Ian has taught you so much, and I think also back to your personal, you are
Mhm.
also a person who is very curious,
Yeah.
right? And probably we have a little bit more time, 3 minutes 5:15, because you have another consultation going on,
Right.
right? So
Next, it's
I
six
can
o'clock.
start.
Yeah.
No problem. You might want to
Mhm.
rest, right? So, guys, if you want to be connected with Yuva, I'll share the link tree over in the chat comment, right? So, Yuva, tell us, I mean, tell the audience a little bit, like what your after
What to
this, like, if they
expect
want to
from
be
link
connected
tree?
with you, yeah.
Right. So, guys, if you guys want to open the link tree, there will be three different links. All right. Now, the first one, right? The first one is meant to connect with me over LinkedIn lah. All right. If you guys want to get connected with LinkedIn, by all means, feel free to get connected over LinkedIn. The second one is more towards getting connected with me over Spotify. So if you guys want to, so hard to search, just want to do a couple clicks away, then Linktree. You guys head to the Brown Guy Talk Finance, boleh lah. You get to listen, check out my podcast. And of course, the last one will be the financial supercharge sheesh. Now, the financial supercharge sheesh is the part where I feel like it's my pro bono way of giving back to society, of being able to provide people complimentary financial session. So if you want to reach out to have your finances checked or a stamp of approval of whatever you're doing is right, by all means, feel free to reach me over there. Feel free to fill out the form over there, and I would reach out to you within a day or two time. I quite aggressively check on that thing as well. So by all means, feel free to reach out to over that site. So yeah, these are the three places you can get connected with me over Linktree.
All right, awesome,
Right?
awesome. So yeah, I mean jangan pula you guys we contact Yuva nak marah dia because of the couple topic pula, right? Lepas ni I kalau ada girlfriend boyfriend who's actually tuning in, right, to talk about this issue, you guys can actually get consultation from Yuva to see how you guys can actually sort out your financial, especially to young adults out there. It's best that you start from early stage. You will get bombarded with how it's fine to actually be exposed. So yeah, get connected with Yuva over Linktree. I already shared that at the comment chat below on the site. So yeah, just click on it. Yuva, thank you very much for
Thank
actually
you, Sophia.
debut a remarkable episode of SNRspeaks YouTube channel, and I'm actually very
Yes.
humble. And it's such an amazing conversation altogether. You know, from this like unconditional topics, from like simple as like, what do you give? What kind of advice you would give to your junior to the financial freedom topic itself? You know, it's like, but thank you very much. I hope you enjoy your weekend, and I'll text you in a bit. Okay.
All right.
Have a good day,
Thanks,
babe.
Sophia. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.